Have you ever looked around at your life and realized you are just sort of checking boxes?
Oh, absolutely. The whole wash, rinse, repeat cycle.
Right. You wake up, you go to work, you come home, make dinner, and then, you just scroll on your phone till you go to sleep.
And it looks perfectly fine on paper.
Yeah, exactly. You're responsible, you're doing what you're supposed to do, but something inside just feels completely blank.
It's like this creeping sense of stagnation.
Exactly. It's that quiet realization that the life you're living and the life you actually wanted have somehow drifted just miles apart.
Yeah, it's the trap of the perfectly acceptable life, which is, honestly, it's incredibly insidious.
Why do you say insidious?
Because it's not a crisis. I mean, you aren't in danger, but that lack of urgency is exactly why it is so incredibly difficult to escape.
Right. There's no fire forcing you to run out of the building.
Exactly. So you just sit there feeling vaguely unfulfilled.
Well, today we're going to figure out how to walk out of that building. Welcome to today's deep dive.
I'm really looking forward to this one.
Me too. We are looking at a narrative from the Easy English podcast. It's titled, Are You Living Your Dreams?
And it follows a guy named Aiden who finds himself in, well, exactly this perfectly acceptable, totally blank trap.
Right. And our mission today is to break down the exact low-stakes mechanics of how we get stuck in these comfortable routines.
And more importantly, how to actually escape them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. What do you do when your life looks perfectly fine on the outside, but feels entirely empty on the inside?
It's a huge question. And usually the advice out there is terrifying.
Oh, it really is. It's always like, take massive risks, quit your job.
Right. Make these huge cinematic leaps of faith. But Aiden's story gives us a completely different, highly counterintuitive framework.
So if you're listening to this right now and you know exactly what that emptiness feels like, this deep dive is your roadmap out.
And we promise it does not require you to blow up your life.
No terrifying leaps required. But to really grasp the solution, we have to start by looking closely at the trap itself.
Yeah, Aiden's life, which is, well, it's the modern default.
It really is. I mean, he has a stable job. He wakes up at the exact same time every single day.
Goes to work, finishes his tasks, comes home, eats dinner.
And then the classic move. He lies on the couch and scrolls on his phone before falling asleep.
It is the absolute definition of normal. He is safe, fed, and employed.
I kept thinking of this analogy while looking at his routine. It's like his life has gone into screensaver mode.
Oh, screensaver mode. I like that.
You know what I mean? Like the computer is technically on, the power is flowing, the hardware is totally safe and stable.
But nothing new is actually being processed.
Right. No new programs are running. No new data is coming in.
Yeah.
It's just that same little DVD logo bouncing from corner to corner.
Over and over again, yeah.
Safe, but completely dormant.
What's fascinating here is the profound psychological dissonance that screensaver mode creates.
How so?
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, Aiden has actually won the game. Our ancient brains are hardwired to seek out stability.
Because predictability meant survival back in the day. Right?
Exactly. Routine meant you weren't going to get eaten by a predator.
Okay, but his brain clearly isn't happy about it. I mean, he's surviving, but he's not really living.
Right.
So why does the very thing our brain supposedly wants, safety and routine, make us feel so miserable?
Because human beings also have a fundamental competing neurological need for novelty. We need problem solving and a sense of forward momentum. We need neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to form new connections.
So when you have complete external stability, but absolutely zero internal growth,
your baseline dopamine levels just drop. You don't feel peaceful. You feel this pervasive emptiness.
And the scary part is often you don't even realize why you feel so empty until something like violently shocks the system.
And for Aiden, that shock comes from the exact thing he uses to zone out every night.
His phone.
Yeah, he's doing his usual evening doom scroll, and suddenly he's seeing people out there actually doing things.
All right, they're traveling to new places. They're starting businesses.
Creating art, learning new skills.
And it's like someone jiggled a mouse and deactivated his screensaver. The contrast is just blinding.
It completely shatters the illusion that his routine is all there is.
Because seeing others actively engage with the world forces him to confront his own lack of engagement.
Exactly. It takes that dull background ache of dissatisfaction and brings it right to the front of his conscious awareness.
And it hits him so hard that he pauses right there on the couch. And he asks himself a really heavy question.
He asks, am I living my dreams or just living my routine?
That is a staggering question to ask yourself on a random Tuesday night.
It really is. Because the moment you acknowledge you're just living a routine, you have to confront your own history.
Right. You have to ask the terrifying follow-up question, like, where did my dreams actually go?
When did I stop trying?
So once he realizes he's trapped in this loop, he's left with the new problem.
He can't solve this from inside his own echo chamber.
No, he needs an external perspective to figure out where he went wrong.
Yeah.
So he reaches out to an old mentor of his.
Mr. Harris.
Yeah, my name, Mr. Harris. They meet up in a quiet cafe, and Aiden just lays it all out.
He confesses, I feel stuck. My life is okay, but it doesn't feel meaningful.
And Mr. Harris's response is, well, it's the pivot point of Aiden's entire worldview.
It really changes everything.
Mr. Harris listens to him, smiles, and says, many people don't fail their dreams. They simply forget them.
They don't fail, they forget.
That completely changes the paradigm, doesn't it?
It does, because it shifts the blame and removes the shame. Aiden hasn't suffered some catastrophic defeat.
Right. He didn't try to climb the mountain and fall off.
No, he just got comfortable at base camp and eventually forgot the mountain was even there.
Wow. Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Mr. Harris is diagnosing a very specific, very common psychological trap.
Which is?
The perfect time fallacy.
Okay, explain how that fallacy works in practice. Like, how do we just forget what we want?
Well, Mr. Harris explains to Aiden that people wait for the perfect time. They wait until they feel completely 100% ready to start their dream.
Oh, right. Like, I'll write that book when work slows down.
Exactly. Or I'll start that business when I have an extra $10,000 saved.
But that moment rarely, if ever, arrives.
Because life is inherently messy. There is never a Tuesday morning where all the traffic lights are green, your bank account is overflowing, and you have zero obligations.
Right. And by constantly waiting for the perfect time, you end up waiting forever.
And in that perpetual waiting, the dream just slowly fades into the background noise of life. You just forget it.
Okay, I hear that. And it sounds incredibly profound in a cafe. But I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's be realistic for a second. Rent is due. Mortgages exist.
True.
If your dream is to be an entrepreneur or to travel the world, isn't it completely irresponsible not to wait for the right time?
That's the exact fear people have, yeah.
Doesn't jumping into a dream require massive planning and a safety net? Like, if you just drop everything because you suddenly remembered a forgotten dream, you could ruin your perfectly stable life.
You are voicing the exact fear that keeps millions of people frozen in screensaver mode.
I mean, it's a valid fear, right?
It is, but we create a false dichotomy in our heads. We tell ourselves, it's either my safe, boring routine, or I have to quit my job, sell all my possessions, and risk absolute financial ruin.
Right. We think change has to be catastrophic to be real.
Exactly. But Mr. Harris explicitly shuts that dichotomy down.
So how does he resolve that for Aiden? Because Aiden still has to go to work tomorrow.
He tells Aiden, living your dreams doesn't always mean changing everything overnight. Sometimes it means taking small steps.
Oh, small steps. Okay.
It's not about jumping off a cliff without a parachute. It's about bridging the gap between your current reality and your forgotten dreams with tiny, manageable actions.
Actions that carry zero existential risk. Okay, well, that is a huge relief. You don't have to blow up your life to change it.
Not at all.
And this realization arms Aiden with exactly what he needs. He goes home, and instead of feeling crushed by this massive pressure to suddenly live his dream in some grand way.
He just looks for a low-stakes way to implement his first small step.
Right. He finds a way to replace a passive habit with an active one.
Yes. Instead of handing in his 2 weeks' notice or booking a one-way ticket to Europe, he just tackles that 8:00 p.m. Tuesday night time slot.
He goes home, and instead of opening his social media apps to doom scroll, he simply opens an old book he had bought a long time ago.
Yeah, I remember the title.
Yeah, it was Short Stories in English for Beginners. Teach yourself.
The choice of learning a language is quite telling here, actually.
It really is, because whatever Aiden's overarching forgotten dream was, maybe it was traveling, living abroad, or just connecting with new cultures.
Learning a language is the ultimate example of a goal that can only be achieved through small steps.
Right. You cannot cram a language. You can't learn it overnight no matter how hard you try.
It completely forces you into the microaction framework.
But notice the immediate psychological shift that happens to him. At first, it's just a simple 10-minute habit.
Yeah.
But almost immediately, he feels different. He feels calm, focused, present.
It's amazing how fast that happens.
But why does it happen so fast? I mean, he barely knows any new vocabulary yet. How does 10 minutes of reading a beginner's book cure the existential dread?
Because he has broken the cycle of passive consumption.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of this.
Think about scrolling on a phone. It's passive. It happens to you. You are a receptacle for algorithms.
And it drains your baseline dopamine without giving you any sense of accomplishment.
Exactly. But reading a book, especially one aimed at learning a new skill, is active engagement. It requires your agency.
You have to decode the words, comprehend the grammar, hold the narrative in your mind.
Yes. And just the act of asserting control over that 30 minutes before bed signals to his brain that he is no longer a passenger in his own routine.
He is rebuilding his self-efficacy.
So basically, active consumption is you exerting your will on the world, which proves to your brain that you actually have power over your environment.
Precisely. And once you prove that to your brain, your identity begins to shift.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Once you assert that agency, momentum starts to build almost automatically.
It's like a snowball effect.
Yeah. A few days go by, and Aiden moves on to a second book. It's called Learn English Through Stories. 16 stories to improve your English grammar and English vocabulary.
And what's brilliant is that the content of these specific stories focuses on life, choices, and personal growth.
Right. They directly mirror Aiden's own situation.
Which inspires him to think differently about his own capacity to change.
It's the perfect feedback loop. The medium is reinforcing the message. And this brings up a crucial neurological concept.
Oh, what's that?
The reticular activating system, or the RAS.
Okay, what exactly is the RAS?
Think of it like a nightclub bouncer for your brain. You have millions of pieces of sensory data hitting you every single second.
Sights, sounds, ideas, opportunities.
Exactly. If your brain processed all of it, you'd go crazy. So the bouncer stands at the door of your conscious mind and only lets in what it thinks is important to you.
Based on what you focus on.
Right. When Aiden was doom scrolling, his bouncer was looking for envy and distraction.
But the moment Aiden starts actively reading about growth, choices, and language.
He's basically handing the bouncer a brand new VIP list.
Oh, I love that analogy. So suddenly, opportunities or ideas that were always there in the background start getting let into his conscious mind.
Exactly. When you start taking action toward a goal, your brain starts filtering the world differently to help you achieve it.
And you can see that happening because his momentum just accelerates. Soon, he adds another layer.
He starts listening to audio, right?
Yeah, specifically a program called Effortless English. Learn to speak English like a native.
And he listens to it while he's walking or just relaxing.
Habit stacking. Reading before bed. Listening while walking.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. Think about the actual mechanics of change happening in this story.
Yeah, look at what Aiden is doing. Is he sweating? Is he stressed? Is he risking his financial stability?
No, he is utilizing pockets of dead time.
Progress comes from small, consistent actions, not from big, sudden, risky decisions.
It is so incredibly subtle. If you looked at Aiden's life on paper during this specific week, it wouldn't look like he was living the dream.
He still has the same job. He still wakes up at the same time. He still eats the same dinner.
But internally, the foundation of his entire world is shifting.
Because he has fundamentally altered the trajectory of his routine.
A routine itself isn't inherently bad, you know? Humans need structure.
Right, a stagnant routine is bad.
Exactly. By injecting a tiny amount of purposeful, active learning into his daily life, he has turned his routine from a cage into an engine.
Which brings us to the compound effect of all this consistency. Because we're not talking about a weekend motivation bender here.
No, Aiden doesn't just do this for 3 days and declare himself cured.
Weeks pass, then months. He just keeps at it.
He spends time learning. He starts writing down a few ideas.
He even starts exploring other hobbies he once loved but had, completely forgotten about.
And crucially, the narrative doesn't pretend this is a magical, perpetually uplifting experience.
Oh, no. It specifically highlights that some days the habit feels easy and natural, but other days it feels incredibly difficult.
You're tired. You had a bad day at work. You just want to zone out.
The friction is totally real. Let's not pretend it isn't. But because the steps are so small, just reading a chapter, listening to a 10-minute audio track.
The friction isn't enough to completely derail him.
Right. It's much harder to talk yourself out of 10 minutes of reading than it is to talk yourself out of, like, a 2-hour gym session.
Exactly. So he pushes through those difficult days. And slowly, almost invisibly, the transformation happens.
He feels more alive. He feels more motivated.
He feels fundamentally reconnected to himself.
He has systematically dismantled that feeling of emptiness by filling the void with intentional compound action.
There is this beautiful, quiet realization that happens, and I want to sort of set the scene for you.
Okay, set the scene.
It's evening. Aiden is sitting quietly in his living room. There's no phone in his hand. There are no distractions.
It's just him and his thoughts.
And in that silence, this profound realization hits him. He is no longer waiting. He is moving forward.
The perfect time never arrived. He just started anyway, right in the middle of his imperfect life.
It reminds me of dropping dye into a massive glass of water.
Oh, yeah. Like when you put that first tiny drop of blue dye into a clear glass, it doesn't seem to do much.
It just creates a little swirl that dissipates. The water still looks clear.
You might even think the drop was totally ineffective. That's day one of Aiden reading his book.
But if you consistently add one drop every single day over weeks and months,
you are fundamentally altering the chemical makeup of what's in that glass.
You don't notice the change day by day, but eventually you look at the glass and the water is completely vibrantly blue.
The whole environment has transformed.
That is exactly how microactions work on human psychology. One drop of active learning doesn't seem to touch the massive volume of a monotonous routine.
But consistency changes the chemistry of your day. The new, vibrant water is his feeling of being alive again.
And when Aiden finally meets his mentor, Mr. Harris, for the next time, he doesn't need to give him a grand speech.
He just smiles at him and says, I understand now.
He doesn't need to explain the mechanics. He has arrived in that new reality.
And Mr. Harris simply nods and says, good, because there's nothing left to teach him.
Aiden has internalized the truth that action precedes motivation, not the other way around.
So what does this all mean for you?
We've unpacked Aiden's journey. We've looked at the trap of the screensaver mode,
the fallacy of waiting for the perfect time, and the incredible chemical power of consistent microactions.
But what is the ultimate takeaway?
You do not need to change your life overnight. You do not need a flawless, foolproof plan.
You do not need to blow up your safety net. You only need to start.
Small steps, every day.
The barrier to entry for living your dreams is literally just whatever small, active engagement you can take in the next 10 minutes.
Reading one page of a book.
Writing one sentence of a business plan.
Listening to an educational audio track while you commute.
And Aiden's story leaves us with a final, lingering question to ask ourselves. Are you living your dreams or waiting for the right time? Because the truth is simple. One day or day one, you decide.
One day or day one. I love the framing of that so much.
It puts the agency entirely back in your hands, exactly where it belongs.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Okay, let's hear it.
The entire premise here is about taking small steps to reclaim our forgotten dreams, to remember what we wanted and finally walk toward it. But think about the dye in the water again. When you add those drops, you aren't just changing the color, you're changing the substance itself.
Yeah, that's true.
So what if the simple act of consistently taking those small steps, of pushing through the friction of the hard days, of shifting your identity from passive consumer to active creator?
What if that process changes you?
Yes. What if it changes you so fundamentally that the dream you eventually achieve is an entirely new, beautiful destination you hadn't even thought to dream of yet?
That is the real magic of stepping out of screensaver mode. You aren't just moving toward a dusty, forgotten goal.
You are becoming a completely new version of yourself, someone capable of imagining far bigger goals.
Exactly. You jiggle the mouse, the screen wakes up, and suddenly you have a blank canvas again.
Start drawing, just one tiny line at a time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you on the next one.